everyone. Kumar Dattatreyan here with Michael Frantz. I almost forgot your name there for a second. I started to get a little anxious and a little panicky. It's like, who am I with?
Hey, I mean, come on, we're getting older. This is what happens.
I know. The first thing to go is the memory. It's like, wait a minute, who are you? Yeah. Anyway, so our episode today is, we hear this buzzword a lot, and at least in our circles, Lean-Agile Leadership. Be a Lean-Agile leader. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Are you supposed to lose weight and do yoga and be able to jump through hoops? What's the deal here with being a Lean-Agile leader? What the heck is that? And so this episode, we're going to break that down. What does it mean to be a Lean-Agile leader? And then we're going to kind of look at the Scale Agile framework, how it's defined there, and what do we see in the real world? When we go out and we help companies implement Scaled Agile or some other framework, what are we seeing there, and what are some of the challenges with this notion of being a Lean Agile leader? So to start it off, maybe Michael, you can sort of define, so where does a Lean and Lean Agile leader come from?
Yeah, well, you got to take the two words apart for a second, because today we so often it's just lumped together, and I think that's okay, but I think we lose sight of some key pieces. And I like to start with the Lean idea. Lean is it predates this whole Agile software delivery thing, and Lean comes out of manufacturing, out of World War II, as you know. And I think you got to really look at it. The idea behind Lean is really eliminating waste in systems, right? Reducing wait times and looking for that pursuit of perfection, a kind of continuous improvement mindset that gets into that. And I think that's a key part, right? And then Agile, when you take Lean Agile and you take the Agile part, well, Agile part is working incrementally to deliver software. That's where it came from. So we mashed that together, and we're like, okay, so we're trying to work incrementally and deliver value sooner or faster, if you will. And we need to reduce waste while we do it, right? And reduce those impediments that are slowing that down. And I think that's this in the simplest form. That's Lean Agile. Now, when you add leadership to it, right, this makes it a whole nother dimension. It adds that third dimension to it. And I think, what we're looking for are people that are in leadership influence positions, or they're within their organization, that are adopting some of that mindset. There's principles no matter what version of Agile you're doing, but the principles are the key, right? Doesn't matter if you're doing SAFe or Scrum of Scrum or Xscale or whatever. It comes down to what are the principles we're trying to adhere to. And I think that's kind of the core, that's the starting point when we talk about Lean Agile leaders. So what we're saying is we're going to take the principles of Lean and reduction of waste and systems thinking, which comes right out of Lean, right? Optimizing a system. And we're going to take Agile incremental delivery and the principles behind Agile, like the Agile Manifesto or SAFe's 10 principles, and apply those into a leader, an influencer, right? And how they plan, how they lead people, how they organize teams, right? And all of those things, I think, come into that conversation as soon as we apply it.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you described it. Lean is more of the elimination of waste, the pursuit of perfection in delivering something of value, right? And Agile is more about doing that in an iterative and incremental fashion. And I think one thing you've left out is that the way I look at it is Lean and Agile are sort of like two sides of the same coin, where Lean is more focused on the measurable outcomes, if you will, the metrics, the raw number. What's our cycle time? What's our defect rate? What's our rate of waste in our system, so on and so forth. The Agile side of the coin is more focused on the people and how they collaborate, how they work with each other, and so on. And so that Lean Agile, it's a buzzwordy thing. It's really what you're looking for, to your point, is are leaders that embody those values and principles, which is what you said. And it's a I call it a buzzwordy thing because these leaders existed before Lean Agile ever was around.
Absolutely.
It's really that situational leader that can apply the right nurturing hand to newer folks in the environment and help them be their best. And for people that are more experienced and are motivated, to leave them alone and provide coaching support, support them in a different way. And again, to reach their potential individually, but also ensure that these people have a good idea of what it is that they're delivering. A lean agile leader is one that is able to point all people in the same direction, right? Get all the vectors pointing the same way, then amazing things can happen.
Well, I loved your point that you just made about, you know, the people part of it from the agile side of the coin, and that's so key. And you know, I started to reflect on, okay, you're right, we had these things before agile came along, before lean agile was coined as an agile leadership role. And I think, you know, you think about, well, what did it look like before? And you named it when, you know, lean's been around a long time, and it's been through a lot of iterations in its own journey. And when you think about, well, what does it look like if you're not applying the agile side of the coin? We get very process fixed, you know, and we're looking at removing those impediments and dead to the measures, and we lose sight of the human element, right? The people element, because a lot of times you've got delivery leaders today, you know, at all levels of an organization, that they remember how things were before this all came along, and they were still successful, right? They were successful. They've delivered a lot of value in the last 30, 40 years, and they did it in SDLC and previous systems. But what we really are looking for is the leaders that embody the whole mindset, the principles, as you said, because now you're getting all of those good elements that drive for delivery. You're reducing waste in your system, but you're also adding back in and understanding and being able to empower people in their roles in an iterative way, where learning faster is the real key. And I think when you put the two together, that's where we're getting the most benefit. I like how you put that.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're both agree that these concepts aren't new. They've been around for a long time, and we see examples of it in the companies that we have worked in, or either as an employee or as a consultant or coach. We've also seen examples where, you know, we go in and there are companies that hire us to help them implement scaled agile framework. And we also see examples where leaders are far from the behaviors that we're describing, right? The people that embody the mindset, the values, the principles. They lead by example, they lead the change, they support, they are situational and apply the appropriate type of leadership to their people. Why do you think that is, Michael? What are we doing wrong?
Yeah, first and foremost is up until, and honestly, I will say, Agile Meridian has tried to fill this gap significantly, and it's because it's such a good need, and you guys have been doing a great job there. But really, up until like this year, I mean, the consistent feedback that I've given in all directions for these big Agile systems is, you got a great system, but what are you doing for the leadership? We keep saying that we need good Lean Agile leaders, but there's really not a lot of skill set out there in the generic Agile industry that grows those people. So first and foremost, I'd say, what are we doing wrong is we haven't really made them a priority. We spend a lot of time looking at the system and at the team, down at the team level. And those leaders, they need good coaching, they need good mentoring, and they need good training that'll lift that understanding. It can't be just generic principles. We provide principles, we provide guidance there, and that's important. That is that first step, and I think we do that pretty well. But it's also in the day-to-day execution. When you're executing on strategy, the same principles apply in planning and strategy that they do in tactical delivery. And it's easy to say that, but in the execution of both of those things, you really need some mentoring and some guidance. And I think that's where I see you guys are. I just don't see that very often out there in the industry. It's just now coming to the forefront where people are realizing we've got to spend more time in helping leaders adopt.
Yeah, I think the more forward-thinking companies, they invest in coaching, you know, one-on-one coaching, executive coaching, coaching new leaders. And coaching can be a real catalyst, a real accelerant to leadership growth. And it's not leaders in name only or title only. It's a true leader that embody these values, these principles, and leaders that grow other leaders, really. They're sort of, you know, exponentially growing, not leadership by role, but leadership as a way of taking accountability for the work that you do, for, you know, being engaged, that kind of leadership, right? So I think coaching is something I see that's missing. Also, you know, in safe implementations, a lot of it is implemented a little backwards, in my opinion. It really starts with leadership, and rarely does a safe implementation start with leadership. mean, I think, at least in my experience, we have training for leaders to go through. They learn leading safe, how do you lead a safe implementation, but it doesn't really give them anything in terms of behavior. What's expected of them? How are they expected to change their behavior? All it does is tell them what the framework is all about, all the different pieces and parts of the framework. But there's very little in terms of what do they need to do individually to change their behavior so they can be better leaders. Would you agree?
That is, yeah, so true. I look back over the last 6-7 years of following the implementation roadmap. You nailed it. It's on the roadmap. We start training executives, but the objective of that training is buy-in. We're trying to get them to buy in on the model and on their implementation roadmap. The objective of those early trainings are not to change behaviors and adopt principles. Although, I mean, you could go back and the founders will tell you, well, yeah, that's what we wanted. We realized we needed that, but there hasn't really been a material, there hasn't been any focused Lean-Agile leadership training. You remember in my journey, I had to go outside of Scaled Agile. I went to Maxwell, but there's plenty of good leadership.
Yeah.
I had to go find those skills somewhere else, right? In order to meet that.
I think that's true. I will say that in an early class, an SPC class that I took back in whenever it was, 10 years ago at least, it wasn't a focus. It was more about getting the process started. And I think the goal, at least back then, was, hey, let's get the teams working the way they're supposed to. Let's get the arcs working the way they're supposed to. And then leadership will follow. And I don't know what you feel about that. I mean, certainly SAFE has a good track record, the metrics, the case studies and all of that. But to me, there's a lot of pain that's not mentioned in those case studies.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. And, take a step back just a little bit on the Scaled Agile part. It's all been an experimentation for them. They're iterative too. And so they've learned from those. And I think early on, they had the right strategy, which was we have to start with leadership. We have to launch, for 4 March, launch train, mentor, coach. And that was all a big part of the implementation roadmap. But I feel like as the last decade has kind of unfolded, and, they do have some good success stories, some great ones.
Yeah.
And then when you look at where they stalled, where SAFE implementation is stalled, there's quite a bit of evidence now, empirical evidence that shows us. I think I want to say it's in the 80 percentile range of stalls are because of middle management and leadership, right? Not getting that buy-in necessary. And I think in the short term, you're fine. You can get away with that. But in the long term, if you want a full adoption, the principles in that Lean-Agile leadership that we're talking about is crucial. It's you got to have it. And I think they've been learning that lesson and, kind of adopting their model to it. I think, and just our journey where we've been successful with clients is not because the model provided that. It's because the coach, you recognize it as a challenge. You could see that. It didn't come from the model. It came from the coach's experience and understanding. Let me spend more time with the leadership because I can see that there's a challenge. That was kind of common there. So I think when we see those things, that's how we work that out as coaches. And I think now the big systems, they're saying, okay, we've got some empirical evidence. These are what our coaches are doing to solve this problem. And I think they're working that into the system.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that if you read the white paper on the Scale Agile website on Lean-Agile Leadership, it's all really good information there. It's spot on, right? It talks about Lean, talks about Agile, it talks about the combination, talks about the behaviors for what a leader should be behaving like, I suppose, and what they shouldn't be behaving like. And it talks about the different types of, if you will, personas of leadership: pathological, power-oriented persona, bureaucrat persona, and a generative persona. A leader that is generative is one that generates collaboration, cooperation, dialogue, innovation thinking, all those types of things. So they've done a really good job of drafting guidance. So we'll put a link in the show notes so you have a link to the actual white paper to read. And I think beyond reading it, it's hard to implement these things because in a typical company, the reward model may not reward these types of behaviors. Right? And I think that's the key thing with any transformation. Anytime you're changing the way people work and the value that's being delivered from that work that they do, I think organizations need to think about how employees, leaders, whatever, leaders and followers are rewarded for that. And in most organizations that I've worked in where they've implemented a big change process, the rewards don't change. And so it's an uphill battle to implement these changes because the rewards reward an earlier form of leadership and followership.
Yeah.
Right. It rewards behaviors that run counter to Lean-Agile leadership. What do you think?
That's such a mature behavior. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, for me, I think about just me personally as a coach, right? Over the last 9 years of learning from when I first started as a junior coach, right out of, just hitting the consultant land, feet running. I spent my time focusing on systems on the team level and the system execution and those principles involved there. But as the years have gone on, what I've had to target incentivization. Like literally, that's the first thing that I start coaching, senior level leaders at the VP and the director level is what kind of incentivization program do you have in place for your managers and for your directors? Let's talk about that. Do you want this to stick in the culture? Do you want to change their thinking and so that there are these new principles, you can take, a couple of meetings with a VP and convince them, I love those ideas. Yeah, but if you want them to work, you have to incentivize your leaders. And I'll tell you, it's probably a little cynical, but I've had several where it's worked. They listened, they incentivized, right? A couple of my clients have done that. Oh, you're right, let's do it. They put it and we are successful. I mean, ultimately, and I'll tell you, the ones where my clients have stalled in their transformation journey, it's because they didn't do that. And it stalls. And to these days, my cynicism says, well, if you're not willing to incentivize it, well, there's only so much we can do.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you take the lean part of the Lean-Agile Leader. Lean is all about measurements, right? And about eliminating waste from a system. Well, if what you're measuring is runs counter to how you're doing the work, then the way that you want to do the work, the way that you want to work, more collaborative, more open, blah, 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 then eventually that way of working isn't going to work.
Right.
Because the measurements are different, right? The way people are incentivized are different. So what do you think is a takeaway from this video? We talked a really high level, maybe bring it down to earth. And, if you're a senior executive in a company and you're contemplating some change, whether it's using the Scale and Agile framework or something maybe a little smaller scale. You don't know anything about Agile. You don't want to hear all the buzzwords and lingo. You just want to implement change. What would you say, Michael, is a good blueprint, if you will, to follow?
Well, yeah, just to sum up, I mean, any type of change in a system, right? You have to be very clear on the purpose or the vision you're trying to head in, right? So if you want to bring in some new principles or some new thinking or some innovative thoughts, that type of thing, you need to make sure you have a clear vision on what you want. You need to get the people to buy in. You have to incentivize it. You've got to get out there and say, okay, I want this, and this is what we're going to do. And you've got to get the people heading in that direction. I would say, when you think about if Lean-Agile leadership, if you're trying to improve your leadership influence and you're getting into the specifics on this topic, that's where I would start. Have a clear understanding of what that adoption looks like, and then incentivize it for those leaders or for those individuals that are going to participate in the process. And measure that, and that's a starting measure, right? That incentivization is a starting measure, and then go forward, rinse and repeat, continuously improve.
Yeah, I like that. Actually, at Agile Meridian, we have a method, and we call it the Disruptor method, and it loosely follows this pattern that you're describing. And we go in without a framework, and the leadership team or the team that we work with creates that framework for change through the course of working with us and through our coaching and mentoring. They create their roadmap for change. And along the way, this group of leaders learn how to decentralize decision-making, which is one of the principles in SAFe. Learn how to empower their direct reports to do the same things that they're doing. And at the end of this, they're a much better functioning team of leaders. And I think our approach should be part of any kind of transformation, is you start with a group of leaders, a group of catalysts, learn this capability. And of course, the incentives need to be there as well.
Well, I mean, I'm a safe guy. I mean, obviously that's what you and I talk about. So, I've been supporting an SPC, an SPCT prospect and trying to, but I'll be honest with you. I know there's lots of groups out there, and Scaled Agile is doing, like you said, a good job at pointing at the principles, but your Disruptor method, frankly, is one of the few ways out there that is you can point at the principles and the guidance all day long, but you're walking them through in their context.
Yeah.
And that is basically what we want our coaches to do. But I would say to you that is a very senior behavior, a very mature behavior for a coach. It's taken me my whole journey, right? My coaching journey. I didn't have that capability, and I wasn't prepared for it at the beginning. That is the capability that comes through maturity and experience. And you guys are offering that. I mean, that's powerful. And I think if you want Lean-Agile leadership and you want to, using the Disruptor method or a method similar, but, not to make it all sales, but the reality is you guys are doing it. And that's what that method is for. That's what you need. If you want
it's certainly not unique. It's our take on how you implement change in an organization. It's just a way to do it. And we've had a lot of success with it, but not to take away from the success that SAFE has had and continues to have. I think that most companies do look outside for leadership support and guidance and things like that are implementing SAFE. And that's nothing wrong with that. It just is.
Well, and they're not prepared. They're not yet equipped, and they may never make that their focus where they're equipped for that kind of direct leadership coaching.
And I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe SAFE is investing more into leadership support and coaching and guidance and all of that stuff, right?
They are starting to really focus on this area. We'll see what that means in the future as they come out with things.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, this has been a good conversation around leadership, Lean-Agile Leadership, or whatever name you put in front of leadership. It's really about leaders that empower their people and allow for growth and change. So call it Lean-Agile Leadership. I like it. And we will see you in about, 2 or 3 weeks for the next episode, SAFE episode. And any parting thoughts, Michael?
I love this topic. I think that, leaders and leaders that are applying this selfless service and this empowerment thinking and these principles, it impacts the entire industry of all industries in terms of retention, in terms of empowering people and having an environment where people can do their best work and want to come to work. That's getting harder and harder and more competitive. And I think we're at a critical state now with the emergence of new technologies and all those things. This is what's going to keep us and set us apart in terms of value to our organization. So I think leaders should take us a long look at this.
Yeah.
And hey, next week I'll be at the SAFE conference in Nashville. So if anyone's watching this, come say hello. We'll be out there if you happen to show up.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.